welcome to the first ever edition of Hall of Fame. I'm your host, Connor Hall. Thanks for tuning in. Who better to start this show off with ESPN MLB reporter and Baseball Tonight analyst? That's right, Mr. Tim Kurkjian. Tim, thanks for joining me on the show.
My pleasure, Connor.
All right, let's get right to talking baseball here, Tim. Mike Trout and Bryce Harper are both obviously phenomenal baseball players, but historically speaking, how do these guys match up to the all-time greats at such a young age?
Well, I think this is very similar to when Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle came to the big leagues together in 1951. Now, I don't think we should compare anyone to Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays until we get a little further along. However, Trout has done some phenomenal things so far, things that even Mickey Mantle didn't do at such a young age, and certainly more than Willie Mays did at such a young age. Now, those guys, especially Mays, really aged gracefully, so we'll just have to see where this goes. And as for Bryce Harper, he was even better than Trout that first year up, made the All-Star team. And the year he had last year was historic for anyone, period, but it was mostly historic, even more historic for somebody of his age. So, to say the least, these two guys are off to amazing starts, but always remember, great starts to careers are really good, but the hard part is maintaining, and we'll see where these guys can go. But my guess is they're going to be really, really good for a really long time.
Now, it's a long time away, but it's a topic that people here in New York talk about almost weekly. Do you see Bryce Harper seriously testing the waters in free agency after the 2018 season and possibly heading to a big market team like the Yankees or maybe the Dodgers? Or do you see him signing a huge contract and staying in Washington?
The MO for him and his agent, in theory, is going to be that he tests the market, because the way Scott Boras works is let's get our best players out there on the market, and on the market they're going to get the most money, which is only logical. So that's what I think is going to happen, and if Bryce Harper gets to the market, my guess is, despite the deep pockets that the Nationals have, they're going to get outbid for him by somebody. And yes, the Dodgers and Yankees always make a lot of sense there. But don't forget, Steven Strasburg, also represented by Scott Boras, signed long-term with the Nationals before free agency. Now, he has a different personality than Harper does, and I don't think he would have been comfortable, Strasburg, going out there into free agency nearly as much as Harper's going to be. So I think for the good of the game, it's better if Bryce Harper stays with the team that drafted him, but my guess is he's going to get out there, and then who knows what's going to happen then.
Now, the Atlanta Braves decided to move shortstop Eric Ibar to make the way for Dansby Swanson, who not only got his first career hit last night, but he went 2 for 4 in his MLB debut. Was this a move that you expected, or was this a surprising one at this point in the season for you?
Yeah, it came a little sooner than I had anticipated. I thought maybe he would be a September call-up, but the Braves are struggling so badly. I mean, they basically have the worst team in the major league. And, you know, the fan base is rightfully upset. They want to see something for all the moves that they made and the people that they traded. So I think Swanson was ready, first off. Most of our really good players, young players, are readier than you think when they get here. But more than that, I think the Braves needed to show their fans, look, here's proof of what we did. This is one of our guys now. This is one of the building blocks for our team, and I think the sooner they got him to the big league, the better.
Yeah, like you said, I was expecting him to be a September call-up, but obviously the Braves aren't in any kind of playoff contention, so why not get him a couple extra games? Now, let's switch tables into a more controversial topic in today's game. We have seen perhaps an increase in steroid use and suspects of late. In your opinion, would it be best for the game to increase the consequences for those who test positive for use of PEDs? I mean, we saw a guy like D. Gordon who hit .333 last year and won the NL batting title. He got called for PED use, served his suspension, and now he's back playing baseball while his team's in serious contention for a playoff berth. Will people forget that he used PEDs? No, but he keeps the batting title, and now he could be playing postseason baseball later down the line. So should the penalties be tougher on those who are caught?
Yeah, I think they should be. I think we're to the point now that enough players have spoken out to say we should toughen the testing. And the testing is pretty darn tough right now. Major League Baseball and the Players Association have done a great job getting together on a drug agreement like this, but it needs to be even stronger because you're right. Guys do this, and they still get paid enormous amounts of money after they get caught. So for some, it's still worth it to get a huge contract if that's going to help them. But this has got to go away. This is still tainting the game, and it's still really giving the game a black eye. So I think the best thing to do is to strengthen the penalties, and I think that might do some good.
Now, I've had a chance to read some of your book, I'm Fascinated by Sacrifice Flies, and let me tell you, folks, I've had a hard time putting it down. It's just that good. The details and the stories that Tim tells in it are incredible. When did you decide to start becoming an author, and tell us a little bit more about your books?
Well, this is my third book. I wrote a book in the late 90s, and then I wrote another book about 8 years ago. And this book is similar to my last book, This Great Game or What? And these are just a collection of my favorite stories, my favorite observations, my favorite topics in Major League Baseball. And the one I wrote 8 years ago pretty much covered my first 20 or 25 years, maybe even close to 30 in the Major League. And the last book, I just had a bunch more stories that needed a home. So that's why I like to write books. I like to write because it's the most satisfying thing I can do professionally is when someone buys my book, likes it, reads it. Nothing makes me feel better professionally than that. And I just feel like I have so many stories in my head. I just feel like I need to get them down into one place or two places or three places. So when I look at 3 books on my bookshelf that I wrote, I can honestly say, as corny as it sounds, that's my career right there. Those are my favorite stories, just in 3 different places.
Now, it certainly gives a different perspective into the game of baseball than what you see on TV. So great job with that. I look forward to reading the rest of it. Now, unfortunately, the MLB season is beginning to hit the home stretch, but that means postseason baseball is right around the corner. In my opinion, it's the best time of the year. Now, Tim, is there a team that you see being the underdog, if you will, and making a serious run at the title? Maybe a team like the Marlins or the Mariners or another team that very few would expect?
Well, it's about that time, and some team always comes out of nowhere and makes the playoffs or does something really big in the playoffs. And as always, I'm not sure which team that's going to be, but I'm going to say, even though they're certainly not the dark horse or a surprise team, I'm going to say the Indians better be watched for because of their starting pitching and because they have a chance to do something really special here. I think the American League is a winnable league right now. I don't see a dominant team in there much, as opposed to maybe the Cubs in the National League. So I'm going to say the Indians are the team that people think they're going to win the division, but I've heard a whole lot of people saying they can make a big postseason run. If everything goes well, I think they can. It should be fascinating to watch.
Now, switching over to the National League, we've seen pure domination out of the Chicago Cubs this year. They have a record of 76-43. Is this the year that Chicago ends the championship drought for the Cubs? I mean, with the Cubs playing their best baseball, can someone defeat them, or will they have to defeat themselves when it comes down to a series?
Well, this is baseball, Connor, as you know, and there are no guarantees in this sport. Surprises happen. It's the most unpredictable sport there is. That's what makes it so great. But having said that, the Cubs, I believe, are the best team in baseball now, statistically and every other way. I think they'll be the best team going into October. And even though that doesn't guarantee anything, if I had to wager, and I wouldn't because this is baseball, and you never win wagering on baseball, it's too good, I would say the Cubs are going to win the World Series. That's how good they are. They have to, do some fixes in their middle relief, and they have to get some people healthy in their lineup. But I think they're in a very good position right now. But with the one warning, again, this is baseball. This isn't like basketball where LeBron James gets to touch the ball on every possession. It doesn't work that way in baseball, and all sorts of strange things happen, especially in October. So we'll see, but I'd have to make the Cubs the favorites to win the World Series this year.
Now, one of those teams that might have a shot at giving the Cubs a run for their money is the Dodgers, but I doubt they can do it without their man Clayton Kershaw. Can you give us your latest news on Kershaw's injury and maybe a timetable for his return?
Well, he's still working at this, and the Dodgers are hopeful that he'll be with them in September. And he's such a hard worker, and he's so committed to what he's doing. If anyone can make it back from an injury, it's him. But he's had a couple of setbacks. We thought he'd be back a month ago, and he's not. So this makes me worry. There's a chance, I guess, he'll be out for the season if he has another setback. But they're hoping at some point, early to late September, they can get him back, and maybe, if everything goes well, and it's unlikely, he can come back a rejuvenated and 100% healthy pitcher and then be perhaps dominant in the postseason, which is something that he hasn't been in his career.
Yeah, he certainly struggled in the month of October in the playoffs, as we've seen in the past year. Now, this year we have a bunch of teams with a legitimate chance at a championship. We got the Red Sox and their powerful offense. The Blue Jays, they have a dominant offense. The Rangers, the Indians, the Cubs, the Dodgers, the Nationals, and the Giants. So take us through who you think battles it out in October for the World Series, and give me your winner.
Well, I'm going to say, and we're all guessing here, of course, but I'm going to say the Cubs are going to play the Red Sox in the World Series. I think the Red Sox offense is that good. I think their pitching is starting to come around. David Price has been a whole lot better lately than he was earlier in the season. I think their bullpen is pretty loaded, and I think there's some serious karma going on there with David Ortiz's last season. So I'm going to say the Cubs are going to play the Red Sox in the World Series. The Cubs are going to win, and that's my guess for today. But to repeat, Connor, these are baseball guesses. That's all they are. So I'll take that for today. A week from now, I may change my mind.
So for now, that's Tim's best guess at the World Series. Big Papi will ride into the sunset, making it to the World Series, but Tim doesn't have him winning. Like he said, that could all change. It is the game of baseball. All right, as we wrap things up here, Tim, I've got one final question. When people think of Tim Kurkjian, they think of exotic and awesome stats that you provide the world. So if you can recall, what is the craziest statistic that you have ever encountered in your entire career?
Well, there's so many of them, but one of my favorites is a few years ago, the Red Sox hit walk-off homers in back-to-back games. So I checked for the last time the Red Sox won back-to-back games with walk-off homers. It was in 1935. The same guy hit a walk-off in each game, and it happened in a doubleheader, and that fellow happened to be named Wes Farrell, who was a pitcher. He pitched a complete game in the opener, and in the bottom of the ninth, he hit a walk-off homer. He's one of the greatest hitting pitchers ever. And in the second game, they used him as a pinch hitter in the last inning, and he hit another walk-off home. So those are the kind of numbers and stats and stories that I get when I ask a question, and I look it up, and I get an answer like that. It makes me really happy.
Well, that was not something that I knew, and I'm sure nobody knew that, so that might have been the first ever. So thank you, Tim, for providing that. Now, Tim, I wanted to say thank you for coming on. You were an awesome first guest on my show. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to having you back on the Hall of Fame in the future.
My pleasure, Connor. Thanks for having me.
Tim Kurkjian, one of the best in the business, bringing the best baseball insight that you can get. And that'll do it for the first ever edition of Hall of Fame. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Connor Hall saying so long here from Castle.